Liberate? Do you mean liquidate?
It really celebrates like geekery and nerdery.
She almost like smelled the nerds coming.
He's a nerd, man.
Nerds are people too.
He wears a dickie.
Popcorn baptism.
He keeps sneaking into the closet of your mind.
Dead.
Somebody else say something.
Proto-death.
The nerdiest of them all.
The mysterious hermit wizard.
Terrible 80s hair.
Probably the number one 80s movie.
Broadcasting live from inside the power band. This is The Blah. In this episode, everybody dies. I'm your host, Kevin, along with my super great friends, Ben.
I am.
And Chad.
What's up?
And also this week for this very special film, we've got our first and special guest from the Point Nemo podcast, Vince.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yes, we are glad that you are here and excited.
Welcome aboard, Vince.
We somehow need to figure out what your superhero name is by the end of the episode.
Yeah, we definitely will figure that out.
It's Vinz Clortho, period.
Ooh, nice. I like it.
Well, this might mean my first death, but what is that?
That would be Rick Moranis' possessed character from Ghostbusters.
I like it.
Nerd.
Oh, that's a huge death. I'm gone.
That is a huge death.
And that was our first guest, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks to Vince for coming on the show.
So I'll talk to you guys later. When does this air?
He's dead.
We're off to a great start today.
Somebody coming to collect the carcass soon.
I like it.
I'm gone.
I like it a lot. It's a great way to start.
Vince is having a yard sale in the first 2 minutes. That's perfect.
Folks, before we get started on the show, I just want to remind everybody to join us on social media. We spend a lot of time on Instagram, but you can find us on pretty much all social media platforms using the handle @EBD Podcasts. So join us there and join in on the conversation. We'd love to have you. We're on there all the time. Good times. So the film we're talking about this week, folks, is the 1980s nerd classic, Real Genius, starring Val Kilmer and Gabe Jarret. Let's start the show.
This movie held up, man. I kind of had the feeling it was going to, and I'm glad that it did. It's probably been an easy 15 years since I've seen this, easily. And I really was delighted.
Right on, man. Benny?
Cool perspective. I watch this, I don't know, once or twice a year, so
Okay.
it's holding up for me.
Fair enough.
Yeah, this is man, I love this when it came out. Actually, I didn't see it in the theater or anything, but it was like a staple on HBO at one point. So
Totally.
I've seen this movie a ton of times since I was a kid, and it's fucking awesome. I love it. It's a comfort food movie. It's just great. That's all. I have spoken.
I like it. Vince, go ahead. I'll go last.
Yeah, I mean, I like what you just said, Ben, about it being comfort food, because Kev, you actually got me into this movie years ago, and I feel like I'm in the same place ever since, where I've watched it twice a year or so. It's got everything that's good. I mean, I'm not of the 80s, you know what I mean? So I'm one of those people that just like tap into those movies later in life.
Totally.
But for me, it's probably the number one 80s movie for me, and just apart from that, stands as a strong film even now.
Number one 80s movie of all time. That's
not a bad pick.
Interesting. No,
That's
it's
for
not.
me. I mean, you know what I mean? I haven't seen probably as many of those films as you, or
It's definitely up there.
It's up there for sure for me. Definitely.
Definitely up there. In fact, it just moved up more for me. All right, so by high level,
Similarly, I've seen this probably 20, 30 times, but it had been a long time. So I very much echo what you guys said, though. It's a great flick.
yeah, I echo what Vince and Ben said. This movie is exactly that, as I'm often in alignment with Jarhigo. This is it's comfort food. It's so many things. It's such a great movie. It's such a unique movie. There's really nothing else like it out there. Like Ben, I didn't see it in the theater. Probably came on cable rotation. That's where I caught it originally, and I loved it ever since. Like I just always thought Val Kilmer was just so cool. Certainly when I was a kid, I was like, God, he's so cool, man.
yeah,
Still is.
And I've loved it ever since. And now watching it like this week, I mean, I've seen this movie easily 100 times. I watch it a couple times a year without question. I just ripped a copy of it that I had on DVD, and I watched this movie 3 times this week. Like, once I uploaded it for you guys to watch, I was like, well, I can't not watch it now. And every single time I watched it, I was delighted. There's never any fatigue. I think the movie holds up beautifully, man. Like, and also watching it, you know, over the years as I've grown up, just discovered new layers about it. And I think that this is a really interesting movie, and I can't wait to get into it because it's way beyond just being like a goofy campus comedy movie that the 80s were so famous for. That's it. I have spoken.
It definitely captures that flavor, though. It captures the 80s flavor really well.
Oh, no doubt.
It's got all the components.
Yeah, exactly.
I think for me, yeah, I mean, I was going to say that it has, like, within the first 5 minutes, it's everything from a sci-fi film to like a suspense film to a comedy to the just like core like theme that sort of all 80s films met with, that like sort of coming of age tale, that college campus feel that Kevin was just saying.
Yeah.
I feel like all of that is like on film within the first 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And not in an obnoxious way either.
Definitely. I mean, when I think of 80s movies, I think, definitely coming of age is a huge theme. Sort of the good old revenge romp, you know?
Yep.
Like a lot of 80s movies seem to revolve around like the underdog, you know, finally getting back at the bully and seeing the bully get his comeuppance, sort of that vibe.
Right.
It's got excellent montages.
Oh, man. Some of the best in the 80s.
Yeah. So much better than the jankety ones from Out for Donuts.
Totally.
And the beloved subgenre of school movie, which I really appreciated.
Yes. Yeah.
And it also, it takes, like, you know, in the 80s, we had, I read this really interesting article about this. In the 80s, we had Revenge of the Nerds, right? And I would say that in the 80s, at least in my recollection, nerds versus the world, nerds versus jocks, it was a big thing. And this is a very different type of nerd movie, you know, like this movie, like this article was saying, and it got me thinking, like, it really celebrates like geekery and nerdery, as opposed to the nerds are just these like completely socially dysfunctional slobs. You know, it really celebrates their brain power and all of that sort of thing. And it really turns a lot of the themes that the four of us just rattled off on their head a little bit, which I think is really cool about this movie too.
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah. What you're saying too, that I was just thinking about that before you said it, which is cool because like everybody in this movie technically is a nerd.
Yes.
You know, by the stereotype, you know, and what they're going to school for and all that stuff. And like, but like Val Kilmer, he's like the cool nerd, you know, and like and then there's Ken, and he's almost the nerdiest of them all, but he's the bully.
Yep.
And I mean, you can see that. I was reading, there is like a respect for that, not just the genre of film, but those characters, because I was reading about how the director, Martha Coolidge, about how she like, you know, just what she put into making this film, and like she really like honored the students, you know what I mean, and the school and the research she did into the like sort of science and all the real stuff in this film.
She almost like smelt the nerds coming with the actuallys if she hadn't have done the homework on this one when they put the thing together, which I kind of appreciate.
Right.
She knew the nerds in the audience would get grumpy as fuck with her if she didn't come swinging.
One thing I learned on this watching and sort of doing some research that I didn't know before was apparently a lot of the hijinks in this movie are based on like, you know, legendary hijinks that have gone on like on the campus of, Caltech, everything from like disassembling the car in the parking lot and putting it together in Kent's room. Like that actually happened several times. The most extreme of which case was them reassembling it on the roof of the building. So just like all of that, the ice capades that they had in the hallway, like all that kind of stuff is actually based on real stories.
She clearly did her homework when she did this movie. And I think that, you know, I've talked about women in film and women directors on my other show. But, you know, at this point in time, this is really, I think, when we first started seeing female directors coming to the forefront to direct movies. You know, Amy Heckerling did Fast Times in the 80s, and Penny Marshall did Big. I don't think that was exactly the 80s. That might have been the 90s, but whatever, close enough, you know. So I would say Martha Coolidge doing this was the exception rather than the rule in Hollywood at the time. And I think one of the strengths of this film is that it does have a female director, and it has her as a director, because she did Valley Girl, which is a iconic cult classic from the 80s that launched the career of Nick Cage. And we definitely need to do a Nick Cage movie at some point. And I think that really is part of what makes this movie great. Starting from the top and trickling down, is that she is a she, and she's the director.
Yeah, I wasn't super familiar with her work, but it's a good point about the kind of contemporaries around that time. Catherine Bigelow comes to mind as well, with slightly later with Point Break and Strange Days and Blue Steel.
It's also that, you know, the actors aren't playing funny, and they aren't playing the jokes. They're doing everything straight based on how the characters were written, you know. So the writing is really good. I mean, the dialogue's fantastic. I've always loved it. I still quote this movie. There are quotes in this movie that are so deep in my lexicon, I don't even realize that they're there, and I say them all the time. And, you know, the writing is strong. I just lost my train of thought. Yay.
Dead.
Somebody else say something. Dead, train of thought, death?
I was going to talk more about Martha Coolidge for just a second, just because I think going back to what we were talking about with how she obviously did her homework with this film. I think that lens from her, because before she did Valley Girl, I'm pretty sure she was just doing documentary films. And so I think she has like a good history with, doing that research. It probably just comes naturally.
Wow.
That's interesting.
Very interesting.
It would be an interesting transition from documentary to feature, for sure. That's an excellent point. I'm sure that informed how she approached it. And, you know, I think part of the thing that I think you were getting at, Kev, if you didn't say it specifically, was the respect that was paid. You know, that research was essentially like a huge mark of respect to the material. I think you said that, though.
Oh, I kind of, not quite like that, but I'm glad you said that, because that's exactly right. I mean, she clearly treated the project and the script and the research with a lot of reverence. And, you know, you can make fun of me and people can make fun of me and say that's over the top, but I don't think so, man, because that is the reason this movie holds up so well.
It would have been real easy to make a silly, stupid movie about it, and it wouldn't have done as well, for sure.
And just to finish my thought, where I lost my train of thought before, was that, you know, it's the actors aren't playing the comedy. They're not playing the moment. The actors are all playing it straight. The comedy's there, and it lands all the time and it still lands. The jokes are still funny because they're doing that, and because it's so well written.
Yeah, and because the characters are quirky too. Like, they play it straight, but they have their kind of quirk.
No doubt.
I think, you know, Mitch is the fish out of water preteen, and then Jordan as the kind of like dorky girl sidekick. Like, they're two examples of like quite different but enjoyable character traits, you know, played against Val Kilmer's character, who's very flamboyant.
Yes. Where to next?
I don't think I've got any other high level.
I mean, for me, I don't know if this counts as high level, but Val Kilmer, like, just in general.
Sure. Let's go there. Kick it off, man.
Just because I was thinking about it. I mean, because before this film, he did Top Secret, which I have never seen, to be honest.
Oh my God. It's so good.
But I know that it's also a comedy film, and I was thinking about just like Val Kilmer as an actor, his whole like history and like where he started, where he ended up, and I just find it interesting that he started with comedies, much like someone like Bruce Willis, and like is able to branch out and do honestly more better choice films maybe than Bruce Willis. Certainly, in my opinion, better actor.
Yeah.
But I was thinking about, they both were guys that started with comedy, and certainly with Bruce Willis, people were unsure that he would be able to branch out of that, but certainly was able to. But I I think about like Val Kilmer's history of film and where he's ended up. I think it's so sad where he's at now. I think it's devastating.
What talk about a little bit about what that is. So for these two and the folks at home, people that don't know.
So I believe it was in 2015, I want to say, there were rumors that he had cancer. He quickly squashed those, but then 2 years later came out saying that he'd been battling cancer for 2 years. He then had surgery around that time or sometime after, and the surgery left him with, I think he had like, what's it called, a tracheotomy?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he had that. So that there was damage after that, and I believe his tongue is so swollen. When he speaks now, he's not the same by any means. I'm not going to do like an impression, but I mean, it's heartbreaking. And I believe he's like, his neck is sort of fixed in one position now, and but I mean, he's still in good spirits, and he's still doing film, which is incredible.
He's apparently doing a lot of theater as well.
Yeah, right.
Wow, yeah.
I didn't realize he had the health issues. That's unfortunate.
Yeah, I had heard the rumors, but I didn't really get a whole lot of that. I've caught bits and bobs. I didn't quite the deep dive that Vince did. So
yeah, it's awful, and it's awful that it damaged him so badly. But he is very positive. He's doing well now. So I'm very happy for that. I'm glad he's his life is good, even if he's not able to do what he used to be able to do. If that makes sense.
That's great that he's being positive about it, for sure. Or maybe I should say it's great that he's found a positive place. It's obviously it's his path to tread. So it'd be silly to be like cheering him on or anything other than just like sending him love. Like, I'm just glad that he's seemingly doing well. I think you're right though, Vince. It is an interesting journey. I hadn't really thought much about the early comedy stuff. I guess it kind of makes sense in a way where like a lot of the leading, men back in the day started off interestingly. Like, Harrison Ford came to mind, where he was like a carpenter on a set and got picked up, as solo and stuff. So it's just kind of interesting the way these dudes enter the scene, but and it's also kind of interesting how often comedy tends to be an entry point, as opposed to like a Steve Carell or Jim Carrey, who started off as like hardcore comedians that then transitioned to drama. These guys kind of just used it as a lily pad into the actual main thing
to get what they wanted to do. Yeah. I think it's interesting. I've watched over the years, I've watched a couple of interviews with Val Kilmer, and in one of them, he specifically talks about the comedies, and because Top Secret is great. Top Secret was made by the same guys that did Airplane. Okay, so it's that same totally goofy, over the top style, and that's like a World War II spy movie, and he's so great in that. He sings in it. It's awesome, man. He says in the interview that he did those two comedies, Top Secret and Real Genius, and then he kept getting comedies. People kept offering him comedies, and he kept passing them up for other stuff. And because of that, eventually they just stopped coming in, and that's why he really only did those two and never did any after that.
Yeah. I mean, Iceman, Top Gun was the year after Real Genius, too, which would have been a pretty big kick in the pants for his career. It would have been really good for him. Doors wasn't that much later.
Did you make it back, Vince? Are you there?
I'm back. Sorry, I don't know what happened.
No, it's fine.
Kevin was just trying to hammer a 6-inch spike through a board with his penis.
Oh,
such a good line.
Okay. I still crack up at so many lines. When I was watching this in preparation for the show, I was viewing it a little more seriously, maybe, but that line had me cracking up just because of Val Kilmer's immediate response. Just not right now.
Yeah, it's a perfect response.
Getting back to Kev talking about how this movie was so quotable and how he was quoting it all the time. I think my first attempted movie quote ever was from this movie.
Whoa.
And just, it completely fell short. It was, like I was in school and my buddy was talking about he's like, oh, I had a crazy dream last night. And I was like, oh, was it a dream where you see yourself standing in sort of sun god robes on a pyramid with 1,000 naked women screaming and throwing little pickles at you? And he didn't get it. He's like, you have that dream? I was like, no, it's from Real Genius. You've never seen it. Never mind.
That was the first ever EBD death.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a proto-death.
Wow. Proto-death. I like it.
The pickle part of that really just seals the deal for that particular joke. It would have been funny without it, but just the pickle thing, man. I lost it at that one.
No, the little pickles is great. I wonder about it. I'm like, were they gherkins? Were they cornichons? Like,
were they whole? Were they sliced?
Were they slices?
I picture like little cocktail ones that you have the little fork with, you know?
Yeah, like those little gherkins, man. That's how I pictured it, you know? Just kind of, but whole ones, not slices.
Yeah, whole gherkins.
Slices were too messy, too sloppy.
And do you throw the gherkin? Do you flick the gherkin?
You would throw it. I mean, if it was a slice, it would just there's not enough heft to it, so you could get a good chuck.
I think he says throwing.
He does say throwing, yes.
That's fair.
I mean,
All
you
right.
could throw the slices like little frisbees, though.
Oh, you could. Or you
True.
could maybe do like the bottle cap snaps with them.
You could. You have options. But the funny thing about slices is they would get stuck to you. At least some of them would.
They would.
Yep.
To your sun god tan chest.
So yeah, that was a failure for me. You know, I was trying to progress from Mitch to Chris Knight,
And you crashed and burned.
but I crashed and burned. Yeah,
It's too bad.
that was definitely a Mitch. I mean, minus the brains, of course, but that was
Sure.
definitely a Mitch.
The thing about a Chris is like you just gotta not give a shit if the joke doesn't land. It's like like the thing I like about the character is that he's just entertaining himself. He doesn't give a fuck
Yes.
about anyone else's reaction, and that's what makes him cool. I think like he just doesn't care.
100%.
Yeah, absolutely. And he's smart and he's witty. So like the lines themselves, you know, the various retorts and the various comments they're smart and they're really unique. Like you didn't see that sort of stuff in other movies, other ilk of this time frame,
Yeah.
which I think is also what made it special and unique, you know, and made Chris Knight special and unique as a character written on the page and on the screen.
But I mean, thinking of school, at least when I was in school, very few kids had the balls to kind of be as outgoing as someone like that. So
No doubt.
maybe later on, you know, like the fucking theater geeky kids started acting fucking really weird, and it was like, oh, they're just the weird ones, you know. But in the like late 80s, I feel like it was right, like you said earlier, right in the midst of like, don't you dare associate with the nerd, because the nerd thing is such a hated thing.
Oh, yeah.
So it was such a unique time where you just did not fucking cross that line, you know. Like Stranger Things does a very good job of showing what happens when you're the outcast nerd, you know.
I mean, I remember specifically, like in middle school was when I was sort of first exposed to it. You were either a jock, a nerd, or a druggie. That was it.
Yep, same. Yeah, there's only 3 categories.
You fell into one of those 3.
We had necks too. They brought the pallets to the beach party fires, but other than that, yeah, I'm with you all the way. There's no nuance.
No nuance. It was very strange, you know, very strange time.
But it's kind of like you can be a doctor or a lawyer or a blue collar worker, and there's like no other jobs, you know.
Yeah, that's it. All right, so let's pivot and talk about Gabe Jarret for a second. When I first saw this, you know, he's got just classic, terrible 80s hair, man. I mean, the part down the middle, the feathering. Don't worry, Chad, I'm not going to spend an hour talking about his haircut like we did with Next of Kin.
Is he like Qui-Gon?
No, I'm not going to do that, but I was just going to open with his hair because it's very sort of prominent in his look, you know, and he very much looks nerdy. And he's really, from, you know, watching this as a kid all the way till now, I can absolutely say that he is not only, I thought he was always like a total dork, and I was like, he's the nerd, man, and Chris Knight is cool, you know, but now when I watch it, I'm like, this guy is perfectly cast, perfectly capable as an actor, and he does such a great job in this movie.
Yeah, he's straight out of John Hughes casting, man. In a good way, in a way of like, John Hughes did a good job of picking kind of quote-unquote misfits that fit the bill, and he really fit the bill. As opposed to like a Revenge of the Nerd style nerd, he really fit the bill.
So he's kind of more like Brian from Breakfast Club in that sense.
Yeah, maybe.
Right on. Vince, what were you going to go say?
I was just going to say that, yeah, like John Hughes casted those actors to fit those characters for his films perfectly. And I think the same can be said for this film. I don't know that it's exactly the same for me anyway as what you're saying, but in the sense that like he's like what Kev said, he's not like a stereotypical nerd. It's like he plays that so true, so real. It's almost like he's the only, like, if you had to really pick it apart, he's almost the only realistic character in the whole film. I think it's because he's so young and he's so pure as an actor. I believe it's the first film he ever nailed when he went out to audition. And so I think that innocence is just like really captured perfectly for this film, allowing him to be like to be the audience. You know what I mean?
Whoa. That was heavy, dude.
Yeah, he's definitely he's your perspective into the film for sure.
Exactly.
I think he did a great job, and I think the character is written well because, you see this in the movie. There are these sort of one-dimensional, socially inept nerds in this movie. And, Mitch has a little bit of that, but he's very, he's not like, he has emotional intelligence, and he's a well-rounded person. He's not just like, all books and no personality, which I think is great because a lot of movies don't do a good job of portraying the fact that, nerds are people too.
Yeah, absolutely, man. That's a really good point.
He's super relatable even if you're not nerdy in this to that point, Benny. Yeah, for sure. So often the nerds are so stereotypically cast that it defeats the purpose. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, exactly. And he also, he embodies a lot of things, and that's what's so great about him. And it's kind of upsetting now looking back that he didn't go on to do more, because he really dials it in this movie, and he really embodies like the 15-year-old that's just so dorky, and not in the sense that he's a dork, in the sense that like when everybody's that age, they're a dork, like just trying to figure it out and trying to figure out where you fit in. And then on top of that, having the stigma of being so smart and going into a school like that at that age. And he also embodies like, the young person that just has no experience in the world outside of their home life in high school. He also embodies like, the kid who's just terrible with women, but really giving it like, and terrible in the sense that he has no experience, but really giving it like the most solid, total dad joke here, college try.
Oh no.
And does. Oh, sorry, man. All right. You know what? I'm going to get the death tally out here in a second. But you know what I mean? He's able to embody all of those things, which I think is fantastic. He's also able to embody like, the super smart genius engineer, who's working in laser technology. It all is believable because he dials it in so well. I think he's fantastic. And the more I watch the movie, the more I think he's fantastic. I love the interplay between him and Jordan. It's awesome.
Yeah, they're great. When I was watching this the whole time, I was like super impressed with him and how he played the character, and then I immediately was also impressed that he went on to become Rachel Maddow, because he looks just like Rachel Maddow, and it cracked me up the whole fucking time.
What do you mean by that, Rachel Maddow?
The girl from MSNBC. He's like a spitting image. It's like he's like her little brother or something.
Yeah,
they look
dude.
identical.
Wow.
Yeah, wow. That's weird. Hang on one second. Oh my God, they do look alike.
Did you eject?
Yes, I did.
I thought you had like
Damn
a kid
you.
in the room or something, but you were like leaving my joke on the table to confirm whether you were going to laugh at it or not. I like that.
Confirmed. I'm laughing. Very funny.
That's funny.
Someone has I'll throw this up in WhatsApp. Sorry, Mitch, you won't be able, Vince, you won't be able to see it, but I'm looking at Mitch, and so I said Mitch.
That's all right. That's my name now.
Somebody made a like right next to each other meme of Gabriel, Jarret, and Sarah Jessica Parker.
Ooh.
And it's like somebody copy and pasted the face.
Oh man,
It's unbelievable.
I'll copy paste it over to Vince.
I am working on it.
What's the douchebag with braces in this? What's the character name?
Kent.
Good.
Kent's a good example of the, oh my God, they are identical. Holy shit.
Wow. But that hair on her.
check your show notes, check your show notes or your show art, people, and it'll be there. He looks just like Sarah Jessica Parker. That's fucking hilarious. Kent was a good example, I think, of like the more traditional stereotypical nerd. You know, like I kind of think it worked for him as kind of the sidekick to the bully and stuff, but a shittier version of this movie would have had all the nerds very Kent-like, and I appreciate that they didn't do that. So,
yeah, I do too. That goes back to kind of what we were talking about at the beginning about how this is really sort of celebrating how cool nerds are rather than populating it with a bunch of like Gilbert and Poindexters and Kents and just being like, these are the nerds, like, I mean, Kent is...
He's such a prick, dude. He's such an ass licker, man. It's so funny.
Oh my God, dude. It's so well crafted, man. I mean, just physically, like he's gigantic. He has braces, blonde hair. He has the most grandma clear frame glasses I have ever seen. He wears a dickie all the time.
The dickie is priceless, man.
He wears a dickie with short sleeve like tennis shirts. I mean, my God, dude, that guy is there.
Yeah, and he's like this. The actor Robert Prescott is like a really big dude, and with those braces, he almost kind of reminded me of. I don't have it in front of me, but the actor that played Jaws from the James Bond movies. It's like,
oh my God.
Oh yeah.
So you take that guy, you dye his hair blonde, and you put a dickie and a polo shirt on him, and boom, there you go.
That's fucking great.
All right, so what we need to do is we need to do a side-by-side meme of, or just, comparison picture of Jaws and Kent. That has to happen.
I'll make a note of it.
Richard Kiel is the actor's name.
Oh, yeah, Richard Kiel, man. He was great. We got to see, he kind of made a comeback with Happy Gilmore, dude.
Yeah, he's great.
Okay, so...
Kent.
Yeah, what else about Robert Prescott or Kent? Vince, what do you got? Anything?
I mean, when I first saw this movie, I was like, oh yeah, he's the bad guy, whatever. And I always kind of like didn't watch that character so much because he's the bad guy, if you will.
Sure.
But I've seen it so many times now that I've like actually watched him for his performance and all the little subtle things and his lines and stuff. And he's as important a character as any other person in that film. And that's one of the many things about this film that makes it great. Obviously the cast, apart from the writing and everything else, but he's hilarious even when he's awful, and I think that's a hard thing for an actor to probably do. Is like be an asshole but be funny, like to be the bad guy but be funny.
It culminates quite well for him too, with the like Jesus microphone in his braces, kind of like standing in a giant popcorn house. Like he's got a really funny crescendo at the end there.
Oh, absolutely. It's a great character arc, so to speak. Like just him. It's not like, I don't know about you guys, but in that very last moment when he comes out of the house, I'm like, all right, Kent gets a pass. He's like one of the guys now. It seems like at that point, he's like, there's like a moment where Mitch and Chris like grab him because they care that they don't want him to be hurt. And Kent is like happy to see them. It seems like he's had like literally a spiritual awakening, and maybe after this film is not going to be such a dick.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, it's like this horrible prank has been played on him, but he comes out of it like he comes tumbling out of the house laughing his ass off, and he's like, "That was great." He clearly has a transformation, and sort of like it's almost like his baptism into the group.
Popcorn baptism.
Ooh.
Out of all, like I don't think you would often see the quote sort of villain character like that, even though he's not exactly the villain. He's one of the villains. He's almost like the toady to Hathaway, but he doesn't really know what nefarious things Hathaway has going on.
Right.
So he's got his own kind of, thing going on, but you don't really see like people putting that much energy into the arc for that type of character in these types of films or in films in general. And that's another reason why I think Kent's arc is so good, because he clearly has like, I like the way Vince put it the best. Like, it's like a spiritual awakening. And just to add on to what you said, Vince, like when Knight and Mitch are bringing him out of the popcorn, he's like, he's happy to see them, and he like touches their faces. Like you could totally see that he's just like, oh man, I really love you guys. You guys are amazing, like just that little gesture, like it conveyed so much. And it really just, I don't know, I think it accentuates how great of an actor he is. And all the times I watched it, I was like, yeah, Kent's the evil dick nerd, but like he's not just that. He's playing it so well.
Well, you also got to feel bad for him in the end because, and this can segue into this next actor we talk about, but is because at the end of the day, he's still like a student in college being completely taken advantage of by one of the deans.
Yes.
One can almost say that all of his shitty behavior towards the other students in the movie is based on the fact that he's trying to brown nose William Atherton. And, by the end of the film, like he's been sort of, he loses favor with him but he's sort of been liberated from him at the same time. So like the culmination of all of that.
Yes. Whoa. Awesome comment.
Liberate? Do you mean liquidate?
Oh, nice one, dude. Holy shit. That's almost like a death erasal right there, man.
I was going to say, come on, bring me back.
That was good. That was really good. So yes, he has been liquidated.
Definitely, dude.
And now that he's free, he can be friends with everybody.
Yeah, but I really going back to the serious tip for a second, Ben, like I really like that comment. Like he does get liberated. Like it's clear. He like liberates, he gets liberated from himself in his own nonsense of like brown nosing Hathaway and gets liberated from Hathaway,
And it's kind of only possible because Hathaway is so perfectly played as the ultimate baddie too. Like
totally.
If it wasn't for just how far Atherton takes the character, I don't think it would have been as plausible. So it's a good pairing.
Very much so. All right, so segueing into Hathaway, we have already talked about William Atherton on this podcast when we did Die Hard 2. I don't believe there was any other film we've done that featured William Atherton.
I think we've referenced him in passing with Ghostbusters, obviously, but
I'm sure we have, yeah.
And don't forget Dr. Noah Faulkner in Biodome. That's a pretty legendary role.
Oh my God.
Dude, that movie's so good.
It's so good. It's so stupid and so great at the same time. He's just great. He's so memorable, man. I don't know what it is. It's like he plays the best dick ever. No question about that. I mean, we see it in multiple films, but I don't know if he's just so good at it or what. He's got a very unique sort of look, attitude, and way of speaking.
Yeah, sadly, I don't think I can recall anything I've seen him in where he's not a dick. I know he's done different types of roles, but he's just so good. He's just so good.
And like to the point that like if you saw that Atherton was in the credits, in the opening credits of a movie, you'd be stoked that he was playing the dick or the villain or whatever in the movie. You know what I mean? Because he's so damn good at it.
Right.
Like to the point where you hate him and you get so pissed when you're watching stuff because he's such a jerk, like.
And he is such a jerk in this film. And like with all the other characters that have these great character arcs, they come to their own like understanding, like with Kent. But for Jerry, sorry, Dr. Hathaway, he is just, it's like every scene he is worse of a person than he was in the scene before. That's
Don't
how
get to call me Jerry Kent.
Did I?
Sorry, I had to throw that in there.
But you know what I mean? Like by the end of the film, he is just the worst.
Agree. So you're saying it just his assholishness just keeps escalating throughout the course of the story.
Yeah, because when you first see him at that like sort of science fair thing, right? Everyone's like all over him. Everybody loves him. So you kind of, I think instinctually as any person that's, big into film maybe or loves storytelling and whatnot can kind of see that, oh, this is a good setup for like the bad guy. Like there's something suspect here. And then like how he kind of treats the parents with that one line, like is by any way is Mitch adopted, like all that stuff. You're like, oh, he's kind of an asshole. And then I believe the next scene you see him in is when he's driving in the car with what's his name? Don. and they're driving on campus, and you're like, oh, he's working with these bad guys, obviously, and immediately we know he's the bad guy. And then by the end of the film, the way he's treating Knight, when he's finally like, give me 5 megawatts, flipping out, it's like, what do you, dude? Who are you? You're supposed to be a teacher,
You're right. His super villainy is well played throughout this movie. I think that's what I'm picking up in terms of what you're laying down.
Oh, exactly. But again, going to what we were saying about the sort of comedy, I feel like everybody gets to have their own sort of sense of comedy in their lines. Like you said, everybody's playing it straight, but all the stars align. And I think that just like with Kent, Jerry has a lot of very funny moments, whether they're subtle or not,
Oh my God. The scene that comes to mind that perfectly sums up Hathaway's character is when he's driving in the car with Don, and like somebody drives by the other way and he covers up the driver's face with the newspaper, and he's like, what the fuck? I'm trying to drive. And he's like, I didn't want anybody to recognize me with you, It's like, why didn't you cover your own face? Because he recognized me.
So self-absorbed.
This is not to go off topic, but with that scene in particular, when I was watching it again, I was like, man, he flipped out about being seen with Don here in the car, but he doesn't care that Don's on set with him on the campus, and he doesn't care that Don is in his office. It's like suddenly they're meeting all the time and everywhere, but he makes a big deal of that first scene. I thought that was just weird.
Yeah, he does.
That was kind of like a gripes of Kev right there.
That is like gripes of Kev. Yeah, I didn't even think about that. You're right. He makes a huge deal about that, but then he's on the set, then he's at his house.
Yeah, there's a lot of great stuff there. The stuff with the dog. Get out of here! What are you doing here? Get out of here! All that stuff is fucking hilarious. Yeah, and all of his little, the back and forths with him and Chris Knight are just priceless.
Oh, his jerkiness and Knight's complete lack of respect and regard for any authority figures it plays so perfectly in this movie, man.
Yeah, you can tell they had a lot of fun probably working together in this particularly in those two scenes in Jerry's home, because they're two very different scenes and very, very good scenes, in my opinion, in that movie, because you get the best of both worlds. Because as you said earlier, Knight is so cool. He's so fun, and watching him, like every time he's on screen, it's like especially I can imagine being younger. It's like, oh, cool. Like he's on screen again. Like I love when I get to have a moment with him. And so those moments with him and Hathaway are so good because you get to root for him the most. And there's like a good moment too in there where like they leave the camera on Knight while Hathaway is ripping into him. And if you guys remember, it's just a really cool moment of watching Val Kilmer have so much fun with the scene, because he goes from like pouting when Hathaway calls him like, is telling him how much of a loser he is. And then he's like, and you think you're so blah, blah, blah. Like, and then Val Kilmer like does a little smirk. It's like all these facial expressions in this one moment. And for me, like when I watch that brings me back to that sort of like kind of kid, like, imagining being a kid watching this movie and just going, dude, Knight's the man, like he's so cool. He doesn't give a fuck,
Yeah, agree. And also really like a really cool way to shoot that scene. I think the typical thing would be to like pull out and show both of the actors, or just show the actor that's like, doing the chewing out. And instead it's like, it's just, it's like a mid shot on Knight almost the entire time.
Yeah, it's cool.
It's great. And we get to see all of that great stuff that you just rattled off. It's pretty awesome.
Should we talk about Lazlo?
Yeah, before we do that, I just want to say that there are a lot of decaffeinated brands on the market that are just as tasty as the real thing.
Is this product placement?
I was going to throw that one out there earlier, but...
It's like brim.
I made a different judgment call.
I had to grab it, man. The time was right. Yeah, let's talk about John Gries. I mean, it's John Gries. My God, dude. He's probably more famous for Uncle Rico, but for me, he will always be Lazlo, man.
Always.
He's always Hollifeld
Yeah.
for me, even though he's been in about 8,000 movies.
Yeah, despite the fact that the character it's not a huge part, and he doesn't really have a lot of lines. He brought so much to it, made it so memorable with like such a minimal palette, so to speak.
Agree.
It's just a testament to how great John Gries is.
He's super memorable, man.
Super. I mean, like with the whole idea of like Mitch sort of being the embodiment of the viewer, the audience. The first time you see Lazlo just like walking, forget if he's walking out or into the closet, it's so brief and it leaves you with nothing else. Especially that first time, you're like, is this going to be a recurring character or not? Or is this school just weird, But like the more they bring him into the film, he, as you guys said, he brings so much. He becomes a part of the gang, so to speak. I almost like look at him as like sort of the cowardly lion. He's the last character that you get to like, and he's he is soft spoken and he doesn't have too many lines, and but at the same time he's as likable and as much a part of the troupe by the end of the film as anyone else. And I do think he has some really great moments and great lines, and his acting is pretty superb in those moments where he's like there's very subtle moments that I really enjoyed, like where remember when Knight has the realization with the liquid nitrogen and he starts going crazy. He's like, I figured it out, blah blah blah, and he's screaming it into Lazlo's face and then runs away. But if you look at Lazlo, he's instantly in thought, thinking about everything that Knight just said and working on the problem himself. And I just like found moments like that in a lot of those Lazlo scenes, which are just really cool and adds to how much I like that character.
Wow. Yeah. Well said, dude.
Without Lazlo there to remind these kids celebrating that they've created a weapon, it would have been a big missing piece as well. So very much along that same line of thinking, where he's following along and knows exactly what the end game is going to be for everybody. He's living the end game and embodying the end game. So him being able to kind of step in as a, I don't know, kind of a mentor there to be like, hey, what do you think these guys are doing with this thing, is a huge moment for him too.
Well, again, the writing of this film, like there's so little and so much of Lazlo. That's that's so great about it, man. I mean, for somebody with so little lines and so little screen time, I mean, he's so central to so many things that happen in this movie. Like it's his arc, right? Because he definitely has an arc. It becomes about redemption and vindication and sort of retribution, right? So he is, resigned himself to the steam tunnels because, as Chris describes to Mitch, he found out that what he was creating was killing people. And so when he gets on the tip with the laser, he doesn't hesitate this time to make right what's been wronged here in the situation. He jumps all over it. He sees it right away and he jumps all over it. He jumps on the chance for redemption. He really brings it to the attention of the rest of the gang, and then we're moving forward with the third act of the film. You know what I'm saying? Like, so there's so much going on with Lazlo, even though he's so not there.
Yeah, he's like the mysterious hermit wizard of the campus.
Oh yeah, there you go.
He, in a weird way, he kind of reminded me a bit of Uncle Frank from One Crazy Summer. I don't know why that came to mind, but it's a completely different thing. But
Uncle Frank,
the dude that's like sitting by the radio to win the sweepstakes, like smoking butts in the bathtub, like he's got all those entries for the contest or whatever,
right?
Or maybe like the Adam Sandler yogurt thing from Punch Drunk Love or whatever.
Yeah, that's what it made me think of is the thing with the pudding tops. Yeah,
which is hilarious and evidently a true story.
Yeah.
I don't know. He's just Ben said it, man. John Gries is just great. Anything you put him in, he just brings so much to the table, man.
And he gets the girl at the end.
That's right. And he gets the girl at the end.
Help me understand that girl. Is she the senator or the daughter?
No.
Who the fuck is that girl?
She's the girl from the beginning.
Sherry Nugel is the character's name.
Is she the one from the beginning?
Yeah, when Knight is first introduced to the film, and he's like,
Okay, yeah, on the stairs there, yeah.
and basically she's trying to find these, like, and I guess Kev, correct me if I'm wrong, but she's trying to find the number one smartest dude.
Yep,
and she's going through them all to get to number one.
And banging them all on the way is important side note.
Yeah, she's sort of screwing her way to the top.
But in a very, and again, like a unique spin on that, you know? And she herself is very smart. I mean, she's not just like some gold digging floozy, man. I mean, when we meet her, she works at Darlington Electronics, where Chris is potentially going to be working in the lore of the film. You know what I mean? So she's not like some, you know, BIM.
No, man, she just knows what she wants.
Yeah, she's Sherry Neutral.
Before she gets with Lazlo, she is with a 15-year-old.
There you go.
Hey, man, do what you got to do, right?
Oh, the 80s, you know, they didn't, no punch was pulled.
Nope.
In terms of what, underage sex, racism, you know, it was a great time. Nobody cared about anything. It's true. I said before, Michelle Maybreck, it's Michelle Meyrink, and she is a Canadian actress who did a couple of films, and she has the distinction of being the only nerd in this film and Revenge of the Nerds, as she plays.
Pretty awesome.
Which is totally awesome. She plays Gilbert's girlfriend in that movie. So you really get a contrast and compare of how they portray nerds in two movies if you watch her character. Very, very different. And I think when I first saw her, like when I was a kid, you know, I was like, she's so different than, you know, the girls in movies like this in the 80s were all these like blonde hotties and, you know, that sort of thing, man, like a la Revenge of the Nerds or, you know, certainly like love interest in movies like this. But, you know, she's so different. And I thought she was really annoying when I watched this movie the first 3,000 times. But as I've watched it, you know, going through forward in time, like I've really come to appreciate her performance. And I think she's really, really good. And I think she plays this character really, really well. And it's an interesting character that's not your typical run of the mill.
Not the same character type at all, but like it kind of gives me a little bit of an Ally Sheedy Breakfast Club vibe where it's like just a very atypical female character for the tropes of the time and how it was just nice to see something different.
Definitely.
Yeah, the definition of quirky in the dictionary should definitely have a picture of this character.
No doubt.
I think I'll echo you, Kev. I think I remember feeling a bit annoyed by her frenetic energy. You know, I couldn't imagine being attracted to a girl who is literally like in the middle of the night using a floor sander. Like,
oh my God. Or knitting a
and not
sweater.
even shutting it off when you come into the room, just like trying to talk to you over it. You know, it's like, holy fuck. That is just, you know, the level of energy that she has is just off the charts and constantly needs to be funneled down some avenue of activity to keep, you know, I think she says at some point that like, if she'd stopped to think about her situation that, you know, she might be really depressed. So,
yes,
which I think I kind of missed, you know, when I was annoyed. So I have more sympathy for her now, thinking about it from that perspective for the character. And, you know, also she's like very sweet and thoughtful. And, you know, the fact that she was one of the first people to sort of like really welcome Mitch into the community and, you know, making him a sweater, you know, despite the fact that she's walking in on him while he's pissing, you know, like it's just, yeah, I don't know. I've really come to appreciate the character and Michelle Meyrink's performance is just really great.
Wow. You've really knocked that out of the park, dude. Yeah, exactly right. I mean, there's so much nuance in what she does to take. I mean, firstly, as a smaller side character and the love interest, the character's written really well. And again, props to the director being a female, right? So she's not just some annoying throwaway character or, you know, like it used to be in the 40s and the 50s, like all the women were always weeping all the time. Like that was their role in like radio dramas and movies. And like, you know, she's not a throwaway character. She's not just hanging off Mitch's shoulder going, oh, Mitch, you're so great. you know, she has her own role to play. And when they roll up their sleeves and start getting revenge on Hathaway, man, she's like right in there with them, like doing the dirty, man.
And it's not an ugly duckling thing either, which is nice.
Oh my God. No, it's not at all, man. I mean,
No.
she's totally cute and very endearing. Like Ben said, she's like very sweet and very heartfelt and very thoughtful and very smart too, man. I mean, you know, the ice skates on the lawn chair, the laminates for the badges for the Air Force Base. Like, I mean, she's in it with them too, man. She's dialing it in. She does the whole chip thing with Kent's braces. So it's not like she's just standing there holding the tools. She's like in there doing the work too, which I love, you know, and I didn't appreciate the interplay between her and Mitch when I was younger, obviously. And now when I watch this movie, I find their dynamic and interaction just so endearing and so sweet. I absolutely love it. Absolutely love it.
No doubt. I do need to call you out, though, because in the midst of Ben saying something, you were shit-talking her ability to knit a sweater. And if you're going to shit-talk knitting, considering that one of the best all-time roles ever, Sly as John Spartan, could knit throw rugs, I think you're mistaken if you're going to shit-talk knitting. I just wanted to call that out for the record.
Okay, fair enough.
Was there shit talking of knitting?
There was a little bit in there. It was sprinkled in while you were in the midst of a sentence, and I just wanted to.
I recall it, so I will attest to this. I will be on the stand. Whatever needs to happen.
Well, you're in Chad's camp, huh? So it's you and Chad versus me and Ben. I like that we got 4 this week, man. So it's like 2 on 2.
Yeah.
I think what I was saying was, I think when Ben was saying, like, you know, you walk into her room in the middle of the night and she's sanding her floor, A, B, she doesn't turn it off, just starts trying to talk over the sander. And all I said was, and knitting a sweater. So I wasn't necessarily dogging knitting a sweater.
You were dogging knitting a sweater. I just wanted to bring up John Spartan, to be fair.
You did. Oh, so it's all about your dad again.
It's all about Daddy Dukes.
But Chad, you know, a lot of people don't notice, but I appreciate you did that.
Fair enough, man. Fair enough. I love you, Daddy.
Love you too, son.
Before we move on, does anybody have anything else on Michelle Meyrink?
Nah, she's awesome.
I was just going to say about her. I mean, I'm not going to say much more other than what Ben and Kevin, what you guys said, because all of that was great. I just wanted to point out, like, her other work. She actually was in Valley Girl. So Martha Coolidge has used her before, which I think is pretty cool.
Shit, that was one of my nuggets. So you sniped me. Nice.
Oh.
Sniped! I love it.
Sorry.
Don't be sorry. Be proud.
Never apologize.
It's good when you get a snipe, right?
Yeah, it's good when you snipe, especially when you snipe Kev.
Because Chad knows how worked up I get.
Yeah, he gets so grumpy about it.
Go ahead, sniper.
I was going to say one more thing about her, but it might be just a nugget, so it might not be appropriate because it's a nugget about the actress. Yeah,
well, it's up to you. You can do, like, Chad will often do what he says is an early nugget, but I know that's just in the guise of trying to snipe a nugget away from me. Let's be honest here. So you can do it like that, or you can save it for nuggets.
I'll save it for nuggets because what I want to really say is a snipe, but it's only because we're talking about actors in the film, and so it's a nugget actor combo with a snipe possibly.
Whoa, dude! Now I'm too intrigued. You
double bank shot over here.
So one of the actors is
fucking trick shot Clortho over here.
I know what he's going to say. He's going to
Randolph Dreyfuss, the son of
bitch.
Richard Dreyfuss.
Oh, beautiful.
Snipe that. That is the biggest nugget that I would have dropped for this movie, and you just sniped it on my own show.
That's amazing.
That was the biggest nugget that you have?
That's not the biggest one I have, but that was one of my all-time favorite ones. And it's probably, I mean, it's kind of impossible for you to not say it because you and I have talked about that numerous times. In fact, I really shouldn't even be grouchy about it because I think you were the one that brought that to my attention years ago when we were having a conversation about this movie.
Yeah, because it's easy to miss, but then when you see it, you can't unsee it.
I didn't see that at all. I thought you were going to drop the Stacy Peralta nugget. Is that a snipe?
I guess, yeah. I had that in my queue of nuggets, but you know that one's.
I just like that he's like. I was like, Stacy fucking Peralta is in this, man. That's like quite a little cameo.
Yeah, skateboarding legend Stacy Peralta is playing the shuttle pilot.
In the midst of his Dogtown Z-Boys days, he's a fucking shuttle pilot extra and real genius. It's so funny.
But yeah, I just thought it was cool because, like, I remember years ago being like, who does that dude look like? And I'd never looked at the final credits. Like, by the end of the film, I'd kind of forget about it, to be honest. But then one time, because he has a lot of lines, he's probably one of the, it's like that, borderline extra kind of character.
Yes.
But he's throughout the film, and he's got a lot of lines, whether it's, he's walking in the hall, says something really brief tonight, or I think one of the first things, I think his first line in the film is when Mitch comes to school and he's like, how you doing, sport? Or whatever, something like that. And just like you see him a lot, like framed out. And then in the final montage of the film, he's the student that has the nervous breakdown. So he's sort of framed out, probably because good old daddy put in the good word.
I like it. Good double bank shot nugget, bro.
That was really, really good, Vince. Okay, so now I'm going to like even test your knowledge further. Do you know if that's true? Was Coolidge and Dreyfuss somehow connected, that he could have like given his son a leg up into this film?
I'll have to have my people do a little more digging on that to maybe get to the bottom of that one, but
we got a guy, Jimmy Google.
That would just be my guess. By this time, like, Richard Dreyfuss is a bigger name than Martha Coolidge. And,
no doubt, dude.
I mean, I'm not saying that to be facetious.
No.
I'm just saying, like, you know what I mean? And so I'm sure that even him just having that on his resume, my dad is Richard Dreyfuss, period, probably got him an upper hand.
Get you in the door.
Yeah. Give me a couple more lines.
And getting back to Kent and Richard Kiel, Dreyfuss was in Jaws.
Ho-ho.
Oh, wow, that was crazy.
Whoa. What happens now?
We broke Kev again.
Everything implodes. That's what happens now.
I think it was just a second ago, so we're good. Just wanted to make that note.
Why don't we move into just sort of like great moments, whatever, and then we'll do, what was that, Ben?
Bits and bobs.
Yeah, we'll do bits and bobs, and then we'll get into the NDR.
Roger that.
And before we get into the bits and bobs, I just want to say that it is possible to synthesize excited bromine in an argon matrix. It's an examer.
That's bromide.
No. Is it?
Yes.
Did he say bromide? What did I say? Bromide?
You said bromine.
Wow, that's a death right there.
You're fucking dead, bro. Mine.
Don't worry about it. Bromide.
Kev, didn't you have like an anecdote nugget about that bromide shit with like your doorway or something?
Oh, okay. So, yeah, that's easily, so starting off the bits and bobs, that's easily my favorite line from the entire movie that I can't believe I just screwed up. And
pretty funny.
It's pretty funny that I screwed it up. It's also when I was leaving my apartment in Nantucket before I left, the last thing I did was I wrote on the door jamb in pencil, "It is possible to synthesize excited bromide in an argon matrix. It's an examer." And that was it. And in very Andy Kaufman fashion, I was incredibly proud of that and incredibly proud of the fact that only I would get that joke.
It's very Chris Knight of you.
I like it.
And that only the three of you would probably even give a shit. If anybody at all.
It's worth note that I did try to throw in a suicide there, throwing in the "that's okay, bro, mide" joke.
Ooh.
Oh, yeah, man. I chucked one in there too, man. I think that was a perfectly acceptable pun joke there. I liked it.
That was nice. Really nice pun. We might need to start using that for now, from forever.
But it has to be bromine. We have to missay it every time.
There you go. Well, I mean, the good thing is bromine is a thing as well. So
it is a thing, yeah.
It's not like I was like saying something like ambiguity, like George W. Bush. You know?
I got an early bit. I loved Kilmer walking in with the Martian antenna, his costuming, and that whole sequence. It really sets the whole tone. I really enjoyed that, him just being silly.
I agree. The idea of like the graphic tee with the sport jacket, you know, like, again, I was like, he's so cool, man.
I love toxic waste. Yeah, it's comment about, well, I would have worn them on my crotch, but
Chafing.
or something along those lines.
No, I think he says, if I wear it anywhere else, it chafes, implying that. Yeah.
Yes, there we go.
All right, Vince, what do you got? Bits and Bobs. Is Bits and Bobs is like favorite lines, favorite moments, feelings?
Okay.
Okay.
Man, so that's a tough one because for me, as I said, being, sort of being that I'm sort of in a different age group, so to speak, not that huge. This to me, like it doesn't force nostalgia, but it creates nostalgia. And so from beginning to end, I'm not gonna let this be a cop out by any means, but the whole movie brings about so many different feelings and just like good, like I guess no better way to say it, but like nostalgic vibes, even though I wasn't around that time. But for me, it's all about, with all movies, it's about performance, and everyone in this film performs, and there's so much about it that it's really hard for me to like honestly pinpoint something that is like a highlight, so to speak, because I think everyone just does a phenomenal job, particularly Val Kilmer. I think I don't know that anyone else, I'm sure maybe somebody else could have done that role, but I think that he really sells the entire movie before you're even watching it almost.
Agree. Well said, too.
Which is interesting considering how early in his career this is. Like, it'd be one thing if this was, 6 or 7 movies deep, but he's coming out swinging from the start.
Oh, no doubt, man. He came out swinging in Top Secret, man, for Christ's sake, and definitely in this movie, too. And I think that it's interesting, too, because Vince, you and I talked about this, and I mentioned it to these two. Like, it's interesting having you here talking about this movie. Like, you have such a fondness for this movie as we do, and you're not a generation removed, but you were born after this film came out. So it's very interesting to me, like when I introduced you to this movie, how you latched onto this. Because I remember, it wasn't until like maybe a couple years later that we talked about it, and you were just like quoting this movie like I would, and talking about it like I would, and like not having lived in that time period. Like I've always found it fascinating how much you're into this film. And if you can expound on that at all, that'd be cool.
Well, I would say that it goes back to like just me having an overall huge appreciation for film, actors, everything, and particularly with older films for many different reasons. But I was just thinking, like, yeah, would I have liked this movie so much having not maybe already been a fan of 80s movies in general, or Val Kilmer for that reason? Because especially by the time you showed me this film, like Val Kilmer to me was always cool anyway in everything he did. I mean, I was obsessed with The Doors. I watched that movie probably, honestly, more than I've seen Real Genius because I've had more time to watch it. But I was obsessed with that movie, and I loved Batman. I'm gonna be real with you guys. I loved his Batman performance.
Yeah, man.
Okay.
And also just like the little things that he would do always, where I just always loved seeing him. He had like one small character on an episode of Entourage, and I never really watched that show, but I saw the episode with him in it, and it was hilarious. It was so good. And then like even his really smaller stuff, like he was, did you guys ever see True Romance?
Totally, man.
Of course.
Yeah. Yep. Well, yeah. When he's doing Elvis, it's like, it's so small, but it's such a cool character. I mean, he's playing Elvis, and you only get that.
I love that. Elvis in the bathroom.
Yeah. Yeah. And you just get the Elvis voice and the Val Kilmer voice. It's like, that's almost all you need. And going back to the tragedy of what his voice is now. I mean, that is one of the things I think about. I always remember those scenes with him, and I'm like, damn. But yeah, now I'm just kind of going on a tear of like Val Kilmer and his repertoire. But
no, it's fine, man. That's what I wanted to. I was kind of cul-de-sacking, man, because I wanted to ask you that question So I just, whatever, I'm throwing it in there. So whatever's whatever is the answer, man. However long you want it to be. That's a really good answer, man. It's really interesting to hear that.
Vince, when you said nostalgia, did you mean actual nostalgia, or, well, maybe like it sounded like you might have been saying something along the lines of like nostalgia for something that you weren't around for, so like wistful nostalgia, or like can you expand on that a little bit?
Like a vaporwave nostalgia?
Yeah, I mean, like, I guess it's because that's what I was saying. I guess before I just didn't make it too clear, but I was saying like it doesn't bring nostalgia because I wasn't a part of it. It creates a feeling of nostalgia, if that makes any sense. Because I mean, as you guys pointed out, it's like these characters, Mitch in particular, it's like he's relatable to you in whatever way you make him. And so are a lot of these other characters, but it's sort of like, in the way that this film holds up, so do these characters. And I mean, these are well written characters in the sense of like, I don't know if you get into technical aspects, like
sure,
who is the hero, who is the anti-hero, and so forth. And those are all characters that when you write them, you try to make them relatable. Even the bad guy, at some point, you try to make them relatable, even for a moment, maybe. But
kind of like Kent. We kind of talked about that with Kent,
right? So going back to what you were saying about that feeling of nostalgia is yeah, I whenever I watch any film, I try to look at exactly what the intention is, maybe, of like the feeling. I really like to be as invested into a film as much as possible. And like I just surrender all my feelings to the film. And particularly if I like the film, if it's a good film, I want to give that film sort of my all, and I feel like for me, that film just brings about some feeling of nostalgia mixed with the feeling of, some people are like, oh, I should have been born. I wish I was born in the 60s or something. It makes me want to be a part of that time in that way. I don't know if that makes sense.
It does make sense.
Totally.
It reminds me a lot of Benny bringing up like Vaporwave and Mallsoft, and there was like a cool video that connected it to Stranger Things and stuff. So like I totally understand what you're saying. Yeah,
I get it too now. I don't know if I quite got it when you started talking about it. I was like, how is he going to thread this together? But then when I think about like, when you ask people the question like, well, if you could live in any time period, not the one you're living in, which would it be? And I've always said the Old West or the 1940s. So I get that total nostalgic kind of feel for a time that I did not live in. I get it. That's a very cool answer, man. Thank you.
Well, I feel like not to ramble too much longer on it, but I feel like the 80s will always be that for a lot of people. You hear it in a lot of new music too. Every once in a while, a lot of people are kind of like trying to bring back some sounds of the 80s, and just like what you said about Stranger Things, it's like a lot of people, whether they were not a part of that time or they have these new things happening like Stranger Things that kind of throw you back there. And it seems like a lot of people, when they make movies based in the past, a lot of them end up being like movies that take place in the 80s or something.
We've touched on it on other episodes where like people of our age are finally getting the money to create, and so that's probably a big part of it. So
definitely. And I mean, like to your point, like when I was in high school, the music that I was listening to, I was listening to a lot of different stuff, but I would say the era that I was like the most into was like all the 60s music. So it was like Doors, Pink Floyd, Creedence Clearwater Revival. Like that was the stuff I listened to the most of, Zeppelin, all that kind of thing. So
cheddar cheese,
yeah, exactly. Like I went shopping with my older daughter. It's like we go into the store. It's like everything's like 80s style. Like now, like those fanny packs that everybody had in the 80s have become a thing again, so it's like interesting watching those be a thing, then become uncool, and now they're a thing again, and like the musical influence, like I hear it like on the popular music on the radio when I do listen to the radio, it's like I can hear that synth vibe and that 80s vibe coming through, and I dig it. It's interesting.
Yeah, I don't think I realized when I was growing up in the 80s because I was in the middle of it. But, years later, I've come to sort of, well, this is what I think anyways. I think the 80s were probably, as far as music goes, one of the last times musicians were really trying some different shit.
Yeah.
Everything between, sampling and rap music and, synthesizers played a heavy role. And, I think that was sort of it. Like once you get into the 90s, it's sort of like there's like a reset and, a lot of sensibilities went back to things like from the 60s or 70s. And you didn't hear a lot of, as much synthesizer. And so there's something to it for sure. There's some magic there.
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah, people were doing a lot of blow, and they were being bold, and they were trying some crazy shit.
Yeah.
And it was cool.
There was a lot of hairspray, sometimes some weird makeup, shoulder pads, lots of shoulder pads.
Shoulder pads, big time.
But if I may segue to
please,
something here that I'll sort of include as a bits and bobs, but something that we didn't touch on, which we usually do. The soundtrack to this movie is just amazing.
Oh, shit. Yes, you're right.
Oh, yeah.
I would say that I'm Falling by Comsat Angels and Number One by Chaz Jankel. And I'm going to...
You said it.
I'm going to cul-de-sac off your cul-de-sac, Ben, because I did intend to talk about the music, and Chad brought up montages before. Those two songs are easily the best two songs from the film. Those two montages that are accompanying those two songs are, I would say, the two best montages in the 80s in terms of composition and musical score accompanying it. Like maybe Bananarama's Cruel Summer from Karate Kid, but these two
That's a good one.
Are so good.
It's a bit overused, but Everybody Wants to Rule the World was pretty awesome in this one.
It was, and it was perfectly placed at the end with the popcorn and the whole thing, and just the actual tone of the film lent well to that song being used. So in that sense, Chad, no, I don't think it's overused, because yes, that song has been definitely used a lot.
Oh, it's not overused here. It's been overused since then, for sure, though.
Again, I'm Falling and Number One are like, they're just so perfect, man. I mean, it's like the first one encapsulates Mitch just kind of falling into this pit of like this new place. He doesn't know what's going on. The workload is insane. He's just kind of getting sucked into the vortex. And then Number One is just like the opposite. It's about coming up out of that. And those two songs are so good, man. I got ripped copies off the internet years ago when you couldn't find that stuff anywhere, and I listen to them all the time. They're awesome. I'm done.
Yeah, you still can't really find Comsat Angels. It's weird.
Well, you can't find it on cassette or vinyl. I mean, and probably not on a streaming service. You can find it on YouTube, that's for sure.
It's on YouTube, yeah, but I mean, even like, I noticed that my phone wasn't picking it up. Like, usually Pixels will like pick up what song is playing in the background.
Oh, right.
It had for other ones. So I like asked it directly, and it didn't know. I was like, it might be these three songs. Like, I had no idea what the song was. So that was kind of interesting tidbit there.
Yeah, the soundtrack for this movie is on point in many ways. When I was watching the movie, in preparation for this, I was almost like too hyper, like whatever it's called, about like every little detail when it hit play for the movie. And I sent Kevin like even something about like the very first like 2 frames of the film. But with the first song, I was like, I need to look up like what this song is, what it's about, and all this stuff. And it was interesting because I felt like it had to have some sort of like connection and like actually thought out use of that beginning, apart from just the lyrics, because the song is called "You Took Advantage of Me," and obviously these students are being taken advantage of, but I didn't find like too much like of anything else about the song, but it was written for a movie in 1928 that like no one has ever seen because they lost all the footage. But the cover of the film has a bunch of because I'm stupid that I didn't write this down. I thought I did. It's Something Arms is the name of the film. Something Arms. And it on the cover of the film, like basically all that's left of this film is a bunch of rifles. And I thought that was interesting, considering that the opening shots of the film has to do with the like history of weaponry, starting with the the bows and whatnot, moving all the way up to the nuclear bombs. And so I just thought that was an interesting connection, and I didn't know if maybe the film then has something to do with, the military or something like that. So
Wow, that was an interesting.
it was like partly a nugget. Sorry if it was more of a ramble tangent, but
All good, bromide.
Dude, you like walked into the closet and closed the door and disappeared on that one. That was good. I like it.
yeah, I'm in the steam tunnels, dude.
Yeah, he did.
I really dug that jazzy tune that opened the movie and that the like blueprint montage. It's super cool.
It is. Vince, share with them what you shared with me the other day, and I'll send them the picture.
Oh, okay. So, yeah, that's like when they're showing the images of all these weapons and so forth. There's one image that caught my eye of 3 different images of someone holding a bow.
Yeah, I
and
saw
how
that,
they're
yeah.
holding it. Oh, and did you catch what it spells? It spells out die, D-I-E.
Oh,
Like
interesting.
just by how they are holding the bows. I thought that was interesting.
Was it die D-I-E or DEI? Because there's like a nugget about DEI as well.
Oh, is there? Yeah, no, it's D-I-E.
Yeah,
Interesting.
the Caltech nugget. Yeah,
Yeah, the DEI Caltech nugget, yeah.
yeah, it's definitely DIE. I'm looking at it right now. I just sent it to you guys.
Double ejection.
I wouldn't quite classify that as an ejection.
A double ejection and an argument death.
Wow, you got deaths for everything now.
Any other
Cocky attitude death.
nuggets or whatever?
Bits and bobs.
I love the popcorn ending. Not to jump straight to the ending, but it's just like the slow-mo popcorn.
Oh, man.
It's just like so... What other fucking genre or era can you have a house blow up with popcorn? Like, only an 80s movie can you pull that off. It's just perfect.
I believe you are correct. Like you can't. It's just I've never seen anything like that since then. It's so. I've never even really seen anybody try to copy it. Nothing that comes off the top of my head, anyway. Where it's like I think probably because they did it and they were like that was insane. I hope nobody ever tries to do this again because
That too.
the
That's it.
logistical nightmare of actually doing it.
It's such a throwaway thing, though, where, like, Val Kilmer walks up onto the porch with the popcorn, and he's like, oh, is that popcorn? I hate popcorn. And it's just like, he just dials it up to 11. It's so funny.
Oh, my God. He dials it up to, 30, man.
Like, you break into a fucking military base, a secret military base, to, like, thwart a government weapons program, and your way of stopping it is to have it pop a giant thing of Jiffy Pop in a professor's house. Like, it's just perfect.
It's the most perfect loop back, though, because Hathaway was doing something nefarious to get money on the side so he could build that exact house. And so for them to reposition the laser and destroy the house with the thing that he hates the most is literally genius.
It's perfect.
It is. It's so genius, man. It's so perfect. That's part of what ties this movie together. It ties itself together so perfectly. And I'll save that for my final retort. Never mind.
And how?
So, any other bits and bobs, great parts that people liked, that sort of thing? Lines, scenes, Bueller, anybody?
Every time I watch this movie, I laugh my ass off at going back to Kent. All the little silly shit that is little moments of embarrassment for him. At one point, Knight's like, what about that time I caught you naked with a bowl of Jello? And he's like, I was hot and I was hungry. And then just all the stuff with the braces and the Jesus and have you been touching yourself? And he's like, yeah. I mean, no. It's all that shit is great. And then his reaction at the end where, the laser beam comes through the window and he's like, okay, God, let me have it. It's just all that stuff always sticks out to me when I watch this movie. It did the same thing this time.
And he's rocking that random yellow Citroen DS as well, which is perfect for him.
Oh, my God.
The Citroen,
That Citroen is great, man. So a bit and bob of mine is that I just love the gadgets and the things that they are able to do. And I love that the filmmakers did it and did all these different things. It's just the lawn chair with the ice skates, the ice in the hallway, the giant mutated cherries, the car in the room, the flying gyroscope thing that Chris has in the room.
Yeah.
All of that stuff, the steam tunnels, like it just...
The fish tank water cooler.
The fish tank water cooler, man. I have wanted one of those for years, dude. You know, like...
The ice for the coffee machine.
Yeah, liquid nitrogen.
So cool.
All that stuff just was so cool to see at the time that people were actually doing these things, right? And the fact that they included them in the movie was just great. And they went to, you know, so much length to make it authentic and to make them look authentic. You know, I just thought it was fantastic. And I thought those things were just super cool. I have since the first viewing, and I still think they're cool.
It wouldn't surprise me if this type of care for detail is part of our love for lore, because it's like not critical, but it is just such a great sprinkling of lore throughout.
It is, dude. And that's a really good statement. A very meta statement about the EBD universe. I think you're onto something there, Chad.
Speaking of random attention to detail, I really liked the ridiculousness with which they turned an auditorium into like a water slide fucking jungle adventure or whatever the fuck party that was.
Oh, man.
Yeah, that was crazy.
The Tanning Invitational.
Yeah.
Yes.
And the like laser bouncing off everything to write the name on top. Like it's just so over the top but funny.
So cool and inventive, man. Something that you would do in college. And also another great gadget is showcased in there, and that would be the rebreather that just takes the oxygen right out of the water and just spits out pure CO2, no bubbles. I was like, wow.
I always actually, not to veer off, but that whole scene and sequence at the Tanning Invitational, that was my always least favorite part of the entire film. I don't know why.
Yeah, we talked about that the other day, Vince. Talk about that a little bit.
Well, I feel like I heard you guys talk about this feeling that sometimes you get from watching a film or maybe a scene where you just feel kind of like gross. Like you just get a weird like feeling. I don't know what it is. It's just that scene. It just like I always just felt like weird and like not that it was even a bad scene. It felt to me just I don't know how else to describe it other than I always like just really did not like that part of the movie.
Does it make you feel icky?
It's like a scene out of Porky's or something.
Yeah, it just seems like a little icky. It's like definitely, I guess, the most like risque part of the film. Not that like I care that that's kind of thing is in it, but because, you know, like Knight walks off with that girl and like it's now we're at a like the sort of romance moment with Mitch and his girl. And I always like, if I'm honest, I always like find those moments in all shows and film to be like sort of lame. But just the Tanning Invitational just always seemed weird and gross. And I hated the song that was playing over it.
You didn't like All She Wants to Do Is Dance, but okay.
I just don't like that scene. For as much as I love this film, I'm surprised that I even found one moment that I just don't like at all.
Interesting.
But it's still, the film is still, as I said, to me, my favorite 80s movie.
Legendary.
That's interesting. I didn't get that vibe from the scene. Like, I kind of get that the scene maybe doesn't fit with the overall piece, but...
it's a little out of character.
It does fit with the 80s, you know, Porky's style, chicks in bikinis bullshittery that was going on at the time, but...
100%.
I did enjoy, even though it was a silly line, I did enjoy the, like, if you eat that, it'll make your breasts really big. And he's like, oh my God, it's too late. That was really funny.
Well, Jordan also has a great line. I just always cracked up when Mitch is like, how come you're not? And she's like, necking? I'm not gay. I always cracked up.
Yeah, I thought it was funny. I think the scene, like, honestly, man, like when you pull back for a second and you look at like 80s movies, these types of movies, college romp movies, like this as far as like sexuality goes, is like, it's super low key and tastefully done for like an 80s movie.
For sure.
Okay. Any more bits and bobs, or should we move on and wrap this up? NDR. It's getting late.
NDR.
Yeah. Just for time's sake, NDR.
Yeah, definitely. Chad, lead off the nuggets, man. Or should we let Vince do it?
Go for it.
No, because I already sniped someone else lead.
Dude, you don't feel bad about a snipe, firstly. Secondly, okay, you got it. Chad, go ahead.
When were you born, Vince?
1989.
Okay. So This nugget is in theory is for you because it reminds me of my little cousin and how like when I was a kid I had certain cartoons that I enjoyed that then my little cousin had cartoons that he enjoyed that I was too old for at the time. But evidently Jordan, the character, inspired the creation of Gadget Hackwrench from Chippendale's Rescue Rangers, which I don't know if that was your jam back in the day, but I love the fact that Jordan, the nerdy girl in this, informed such a random character in a Chippendale Rescue Rangers cartoon.
That's interesting. I definitely watched Chippendales, but I just don't remember the characters enough to recall. But that's cool.
That's fine. The nugget's still for you, even if you don't recall.
I will still keep it.
It's also a snipe because I saw that one too, and I was going to drop that one. So,
well, fuck you.
Well, I'm not going to get pissed because I'm not going to feed into your negative Darth Cape Cod Mall drama.
Who's next?
Your new nickname should be Darth Cape Cod Mall.
Cape Cod Darth Mall.
No, Darth Cape Cod Mall.
Fair enough.
Good times, man. Go ahead, or somebody else go. Benny, what do you got?
As usual, I bow out of the Nuggets section.
I love how you ask him every week, Kevin. Every week he's like, "It's not my fucking section, Kev."
He doesn't always do that.
Almost
He's
always,
definitely
dude.
dropped. No. Not only has he doesn't always do that, he has dropped some nuggets. He's dropped some excellent nuggets in the past. Okay,
Fair enough.
I'm gonna jump to his rescue. Okay.
I do actually have a whole thing, but it would be way too long to try and incorporate at this point. I know Chad wants to get to bed, so
No, I'm fine.
another time.
Chad's like, no, you can do it.
No, dude, it has to do with the popcorn house and like, you know, how I watched the Mythbusters episode where they disprove the whole thing, and I don't want to get into it.
Okay.
It's too long. It's good, but it's too long.
Well, there you go. You just dropped the nugget. I was going to do that one too, so you sniped it. I wasn't going to go into it at length. I was just going to say that they tried this on Mythbusters.
You got one, Vince?
Vince, what do you got?
I've got nuggets, bruh.
Ooh, this kid came prepared, dude.
I mean, this one has to be a snipe, I think, but it's also about the popcorn and the popcorn house. But upon investigation, I guess it took 3 months to pop the popcorn used for that final scene.
It's bananas.
Just like nonstop popping of popcorn. And I guess there was the company that was producing this popcorn, the factory burned down to the ground because they were just nonstop popping. And
Oh, wait, you mean because of this film?
yeah, so a popcorn factory burned to the ground. And so because of this, they were like, all right, we need to. So all the popcorn on set was covered in flame retardant. And that's pretty much my nugget about that.
And that's all I have to say about that yet.
That's
like
good. That's a good one. Yeah, that was quite an undertaking, the whole idea of the popcorn, and they really dialed it in. Like, they really put the energy into it, and it paid off. We talked about, all right, so I've had most of my nuggets sniped, the Dreyfus nugget. One is Dean Devlin is in this movie before he became a filmmaker, quote unquote, that did Independence Day, that terrible movie. He was in this film. And I do believe he has a line in this movie. I don't remember what it is, though. Also, our friend Gabe Jarret was in The Karate Kid Part 3, which I did not know.
Whoa.
Yeah, exactly. He also had guest appearances on a number of TV shows, including 21 Jump Street, which is a favorite of mine growing up.
My only other nugget is we kind of touched on earlier where the house that they filmed this in was an actual frat house, Dabney House at Caltech. And there's a tradition at Dabney House where you put the initials DEI on anything and everything as kind of like a mark of territory. And that's why Drain Experts Incorporated and Darlington Electronic Instruments is a couple of fictitious companies in the movie. And evidently they like in real life there's like someone from this frat wrote it on the top of Everest, and other people have like etched it onto satellites and spacecraft that have gone up into orbit and stuff. And it's just kind of a funny, weird little anecdote.
Yeah, totally, man.
And I like it. They paid homage to the place that they filmed it at. So another example of respect given to the source material, I suppose.
Yeah, it is cool, man. I mean, she did her homework on Caltech and the science and all that stuff, which just totally pays off and makes this movie such a great movie.
I think I found a James Cameron's dad nugget on the IMDb trivia page, Kev, that I thought you would find interesting.
Oh boy,
where
that old chestnut. Go ahead.
In the trivia section of Real Genius on IMDb, it is claimed that Tom Hanks has a cameo around 12 minutes into the movie where Mitch bumps into him when he's talking to the older people on the stairs, and I like paused it and looked at it, and I'm like, so don't buy that it's Tom Hanks, and I definitely think that
I don't buy it.
It's a James Cameron's dad on the shitter style trivia nugget.
Wait, what is the scene exactly?
So like early on, Mitch leaves the science fair and like is off to college, and he's walking down a staircase and bumps into an older woman who's like, "Is this where the president's blah 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 is?" And gets stopped by an older gentleman who shows up in the last scene to watch the laser beam come in. And as he's walking away, Mitch bumps into some dude and was like, "Excuse me," and it's supposed to be Tom Hanks, but it fucking isn't.
No way. I don't buy it either. I know exactly what you're talking about.
It kind of looks like him for a split second at the end, but I just don't buy it.
He's not in the credits.
But the only reason I really bring it up is because I want to tease you about the James Cameron thing again.
I've got it queued up.
If you got it queued up and you want to eject and look at it while we keep talking, it's up to you.
Yeah, keep going. I'm. Yeah, no way. No way.
That's what I'm saying.
Busted. You're like, you sound just like us. That's perfect.
At the last frame that he's in it, you can kind of get a flavor of Tom Hanks, but it fucking isn't him, man.
No, Tom Hanks was doing bosom buddies at this point in time, I think. Okay, continuing nuggets.
I don't know if these are nuggets or worth it. Maybe we'll cut it out or something. But in the trailer, there was a scene where he's getting lifted on a lawn chair with a bunch of balloons, and it's not in the movie.
Yes, not a nugget, but I definitely wanted to talk about that.
Right. I mean, the thing, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I saw this trailer on TV when I was a kid. I saw that balloon chair scene, and that hooked me into this movie. I thought that was the coolest thing on the face of the planet. I am certain I tried to recreate that effect with balloons and was very disappointed very quickly when it didn't work. But why they didn't include it in the film is just, it baffles my mind.
Makes me think of the A-Team episode where I think they escape a prison by inflating lawn care plastic bags with hair dryers and escaping with them tied up to a lawn chair.
That's fucked. That's fucking hilarious. Hair dryers and lawn bags?
They fastened hair dryers to a lawn chair and made it into some sort of flotation or hovercraft kind of.
No. They inflated plastic bags with a hair dryer, a la like a hot air balloon.
Oh yes.
Okay.
And went up, and escaped from a prison or somewhere with that.
Dude, that is so A-Team. Jesus.
Yeah.
I'm just visualizing Mr. T all the way on that one.
They were so freaking MacGyver sometimes, those guys.
So it was MacGyver.
Well, I know, right? It's kind of crazy.
Touche, Benny.
Touche, dude. Nice one. Okay, nuggets. Robert Prescott. This one. Okay, this is mostly for Ben. And actually for Vince too, because I believe you've played this game as well. Robert Prescott was in The Bourne Legacy, which I didn't know, playing an Air Force officer, but he was also voiced one of the characters in Red Dead Redemption 2.
Whoa.
So Kent, he voiced the character Sheriff Hanley in Red Dead Redemption 2. I have not had a chance to get into that game yet. So that's for Ben and Vince.
I love that game.
I know. Ben's really into it too. He's played probably the whole thing.
Yeah, I played it twice.
I did play the whole thing. I'm having a hard time recalling that character, but that's really interesting.
It's good to see that he is still out there doing cool stuff, because I think he's really great. And I loved him as Kent, and I always will. Let's see. I got a lot of my nuggets got sniped. Oh, this was the first movie at least according to the producers, and they're probably right, to be promoted using the internet.
Whoa.
So they did that on purpose because the movie was so like nerd centric and like technology centric. So they held like a kind of like a conference call kind of chat room forum thing on the CompuServe server before this movie came out as part of the promotion of this film, which I thought was super interesting.
That's pretty random.
Deaths?
Did you write them down? You had some ejection. You had at least one ejection.
I always write them down, dude. I got them all right here.
I ejected too, I think.
All right. Vince had an immediate death.
That was fucking great.
That was like perfect. Your first guest on the show, you die in the first 10 seconds. That was great. And I can't know what was the death again?
Not knowing the reference to Ghostbusters for his namesake.
Oh God, yeah, terrible. Yeah, that's your official EBD superhero name is Vinz Clortho.
I feel like I did come back, but now that I'm hearing it again and reliving it, I think I should remain dead.
Hey, it's trick shot Vinz Clortho.
I like it.
It is a trick shot. This is an interesting topic too, and I'll get to that in a second. So then we had I ejected on the Rachel Maddow thing. And then I forgot that John Gries was in the movie twice while we were gaming off talking about the show. Egregious. Okay, then this is what's controversial because this has never happened before. Then later, Vince dropped a line from the movie seamlessly into the conversation when Ben was talking about liberation, and he said liquidate. And then it was posited that could be a resurrection from said death. So that could possibly be a new thing going forward. I don't know. I don't know how to classify it.
No, I don't buy that. I like the line, but there's no fucking way you come back to life, man. This isn't in this episode. Everyone comes back to fucking life.
And if you're stacking those two against themselves, my failure to understand Ben immediately is embarrassing. I'm ashamed. So
I'm ashamed of myself.
To come back to life because I quoted the movie we're talking about that I prepared for, that I've seen a lot, that's not right.
Okay. All right. That's all I wanted to do was clear that up because you brought that up. You and Ben brought that up when it happened. So there we go.
I was too eager to redeem myself.
No, definitely. I died when I said bromine instead of bromide, and Ben helped kill me in that. That was great.
Well, I also killed myself.
Yep, bro. Mine.
Yeah, that's true. A little suicide death there. And then, I don't know, according to chat, I had a double ejection and then an argument death when I contested it later on.
I ejected as well.
And that's the death tally for this week, folks.
Benny, did you die besides the bromine one, which I don't think you died on?
No, I don't think he died on that
well,
either. He was trying to save me.
I did kind of have an ejection death when I was pulling up the Sarah Jessica Parker
yeah.
thing there. But, I'll leave that up to you guys.
Okay.
Whether it was worthy or whether it was an ejection death. I tried to stay in the show during it, so.
I dig it. Ratings?
Let's do it. Let's let our guest go first.
Okay.
What is your rating system again?
Whatever you want it to be, my friend.
Just letters on TV, numbers on movies.
Letters on TV, numbers on movies.
Or whatever you want.
You can do whatever you want.
Okay. So, yeah, I mean, I'm going to give this movie, out of 10, I'm going to give it a solid 9.
Nice.
Wow. Any comments to go with that? Or you want to keep it short and sweet?
I mean, I'll keep it short and sweet. I mean, it's from everything from the acting, the directing. I like when I'm able to see a movie and see not just the acting, but see the directing in some ways. And I feel like this movie does a great job at that. The soundtrack, everything. It's and as far as being a movie that can hold up from 1985 to now, if I had given it any other lower rating before, it's achieved 9 status with me.
Very nice.
I like it.
Benny?
Okay, so I fired up the improbability drive, and it popped out a few things, but
nice.
I think I'm going to go with this movie gets all the screaming women and the little pickles from the sun god dream that Knight had.
Yes.
That is awesome.
And we established that they're gherkins, yes?
Yes, we established that they're whole, not sliced gherkins.
Or Cornichons.
Or Cornichons. Okay. Fair enough.
Okay.
All right, I'll go next.
All right, go.
In the annals of the algorithm, a 5 is a good movie, a 6 is a really good movie, and a 7 is a great movie. I think, weighed against every other movie in existence, the rating that I'm giving it probably seems a bit low, but it's in good company, as usual. So this movie is 5.5 in the pipe, and it is...
Nice reference there.
Thank you. It is just above Inner Space, in the neighborhood of Blazing Saddles, Spies Like Us, Wayne's World, and Airplane. So it's in very, very good company in the comedy of the era. And it's a very, very good movie, and I didn't move it from where it was previously rated. So I had previously rated it, I don't know, a few years back, and I am happy for it to stay there.
Awesome.
Yeah, but it was fun. I had a good time. It held up.
Yeah, it's very fun. And it does hold up, and I'm amazed at how well it holds up. I'm not amazed, actually. This movie is so competently researched, directed, acted, written. The dialogue is great. The script is great. You know, it holds up after 30-something years. It's still fantastic, and I'm still finding more and more things that I love about it, going deeper and deeper, like just the incredible performances of the cast that I can now appreciate. I wish some of those actors were still working, and some of them aren't, you know, like Michelle Meyrink. I just think it's fantastic. I think one of you guys said, maybe Vince, that this might be the greatest 80s movie. And after hearing that and thinking about that during the course of this podcast, I think this is the greatest 80s movie. Like, it's so great. The nerdery, a little bit of sci-fi in there, the comedy, it's so unique, it's so different, and it's so well done that I think it's fantastic, man. And I'm going to give this movie a straight up 10. Boom.
Awesome.
There's nothing I don't like about it. There's nothing I didn't like about it. Nothing ever bothered me about it. And like I said, I was able to watch this movie 3 times this week with zero trouble whatsoever.
I like it, man.
Yeah, baby.
Awesome. So Vince, how was your popcorn baptism?
I feel good. The best thing about a popcorn baptism is that it's dry. You're dry. There's no wet.
That's a really good point.
Nothing sticky.
Yeah.
And so I feel good.
I like it, man. It's been great having you.
Yeah.
Yeah, been a blast. I appreciate being on. It's an honor to be the first guest.
Wow, dude. Thank you. You really brought a lot to the table, man. You did your homework. Appreciate that. It's going to bring a lot to the episode for sure. So before I ask Algorithm what we're working on next week, be sure to check out Vince's podcast, which is the Point Nemo podcast. It's been on a bit of a hiatus, but there's quite a few episodes backlogged. You can find that on every single podcast platform you can think of.
I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, pretty sure. Most platforms, iTunes, Stitcher.
Yeah. Spotify, and it's on YouTube as well.
There you go.
Because we did ours was a video version mostly, and we're having meetings currently in regards to bringing it back to life with a somewhat of a new format, and we're excited to do that. So, you know, if anyone wants to follow Point Nemo on Instagram, you can keep your eyes out for those up and coming episodes.
Sweet.
Nice.
I think I did an episode with you, Vince, didn't I, as a guest?
Absolutely, and incidentally, it's funny because you were our first guest.
Hey.
Oh shit! Hey, there you go, a little meta.
So that was cool.
Right on, man. I like it.
I think it was before you guys were doing this, so I don't remember though.
I believe you're right. Okay, Algorithm. What's up next week?
Next week, we're releasing the 3rd book in the Hyperion Cantos, Endymion.
So check that out. That's good. And if you haven't listened to the audiobook or read the book, Jesus, get a copy and get on it, because it's going to be good. Because it is good. Let's file this movie under H for toy, and I will see you next time.
See ya.
See ya.
Later.
And that's going to wrap up this week's episode, folks. If you'd like to support the show, there's a bunch of great ways you can do that. Firstly, you can rate us and review us on iTunes, Stitcher, Podcast Republic, wherever you get your podcast muffins. And you can also leave us a review, which is incredibly powerful for people that are searching around looking for something good to listen to. If you'd like to support us, you could also support us on Patreon. We now have a Patreon, various different levels of nerdery and giving, so please check that out. That's patreon.com/EBD podcast. You can find the show notes for this episode in your podcast app of choice or at our website, ebd.fm/episodes/83. Endymion, part of the Hyperion series of books that we've been doing, that's coming up soon, so be sure to keep an eye out for that and do your reading or do your listening. Thanks for joining us on this inaugural episode with our first guest, and thanks to Vinz Clortho for coming onto the show and joining us and lending his thoughts to this incredibly great film. Thanks for tuning in, folks, and we'll see you next time.